Nivedita, maybe you can start. Nivedita?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please start.
Okay.
Start with your intro.
Good evening, everyone. As you all know that today we are gathered here for the Indian Physics Association colloquium on randomness in biological evolution by Professor Kavita Jain, Professor Theoretical Science Unit JNCASR, Bengaluru. I would like to begin the event by calling Professor Samit Mandal to introduce the Indian Physics Association. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Nivedita. Is possible to transmit or present my transparency? I try to share my screen. Let's see. Oh, I am disabled. So maybe okay. Mr. Sinde, hello. Okay, maybe I just talk about the Indian Physics Association. Before that, I like to congratulate the organizer for hosting this meeting or the seminar in behalf of IPA, Indian Physics Association. I also thanks Professor Kavita Jain for delivering the lecture for today's seminar. And as you know, the Indian Physics Association, which is actually started in 1970. And after that, it spent, I think we are already more than 50 years. And the last 2021, we already hosted this 50 years of Indian Physics Association. And this particular platform, this Indian Physics Association platform, was started to mainly to discuss about the physics issue and also the several other issues, which is faced by the scientists in this country and also maybe also from the outside the country. So this Physics Association, we have several chapters, around 47 chapters we have all over the India. It's a north, south, east, west. We have several places. We have our own chapters, around 4,400 members. The life member we have, and also we have several the member for the 1 year or 2 year memberships. So our main activities are mainly the threefold. One is the obviously increase the interaction between the different scientists, and also we have several international collaboration like American Physical Society, then the Institute of Physics, UK, then Italian Physics Society, then also Asia Pacific Physics Society, Association for Asia Pacific Physics Society. So those are the places we have a MOU. And except that, we have also participated several other international forum. And we have an exchange program like a IOP. We have an exchange program with them. So therefore, we invite some scientists from the UK, and also we also recommend some or nominate some scientists from the India to go to UK and also deliver the series of lecture. Similar thing we are now trying to do with other association. They accept this collaborative issue, process. We have also published the journal. So that is a bulletin, IPA bulletin. This is a previously it is every month. Now we are publishing in every 3 months. And this journal then covers mostly the scientific articles from our eminent scientists, and also it covers some of the like a old department in physics department in our country and their history. And also it's covered the recent development which is going on all over the world. And we also we are also considered few awards. So some of them are specifically for the senior scientist, and some of them are for junior researcher, like those who are doing the PhD. Some of the prominent research researcher also receive this type of awards. So some of the awards are like a Ashwini Raut Awards for the nuclear physics, then Rahul Bose Memorial Award for the best thesis presentation in the high energy physics, then CVK Baba Award for the best thesis presentation in nuclear physics, then Anil Kumar and Harti Bhatnagar best PhD thesis award for solid state physics. Those are mainly for junior level researcher. And we have also the school level, some of the awards are there, like a CL Bhatt Memorial Awards for the best student at the Indian Astronomy Olympiad Camp. Also, we have an Indian Physics Association Award at the International Physics Olympiad Camp. Those are mainly for the school student. And the senior faculty, we have also few awards like a R.D. Billa Award in Physics, then the Sri Murali Mohan Chengi Memorial Award for Excellence in the Applied Physics, P.K. Iyengar Memorial Award for Excellence in Experimental Physics, then Booty Foundation Award for Excellence in Theoretical Physics, Astrophysics, and the Biophysics, then S.N. Sattamurthy Award, Memorial Award in Physics for the Young Scientist, and S.N. Sheshadri Memorial Instrumentation Award for the Physical Sciences. So those are the awards we generally generally for the every 2 years we can generally offer, and we proper advertisement we generally give in the papers, and also send circular to the different different institute and the university. So at present, the Professor S. Ramakrishnan is our president, is the director of TIFR, and the Professor Tanushree Saha Dasgupta, the vice, is the vice president, is the director of Satyen Bose National Center for Basic Science, and then Professor Vandana Nalal is the joint secretary, and myself is a Vandana Nalal is the secretary, and myself is the joint secretary, and Dr. Aradhana Srivastav from the BIRC is the treasurer. And from 2000 onward, we have started a new section in our IPA. That section is generally for the gender in the physics. And this is known as a GIPWG, that is the Gender in the Physics Working Group. This platform is mainly to address the various issues related to the gender parity in the physics profession. And at present, Professor Subhavati Goswami is the chair of this group, and previously Professor Prajjal Shastri from the IIA Bangalore, she was the past chair. And we obviously, so if you are interested to join the IPA, you are also welcome. So for the student, we have a few option to join. So you can go to the TIFR. Right now, our website is hosted at the TIFR server. So you can go to the TIFR, www.tifr.res.in, and then IPA, then you can get to our website. And here you can find all the details about the present activity, and also for membership and everything, you can get it there. We also host the several talks and series of talks, and it can be hosted in the different chapter also. Unfortunately, the several chapters are not in working, but the few chapters are working. But we are trying to activate most of the chapter, which is I mentioned earlier. So, and also you are welcome. You are welcome to join. All the students are welcome to join our the IPA association. With that, I am also thank you. So maybe I can just hand over these two Nivedita for further.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker of the day, Professor Kavita Jain. She completed her PhD in theoretical physics from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, and carried out postdoctoral work at the University of Cologne in Germany and at the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel. She joined JNCASR as a faculty in 2007, where she is currently a full professor. Her research interests lie in the statistical physics and evolutionary biology. Students can put in their queries in the chat box and the queries would be taken after the talk is completed. Over to you, Professor Kavita Jain.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Nirita. So let me just start sharing the screen once again. So I hope it's shared. Can you confirm? Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yes.
Okay. Fine. So let me start here. And first of all, I would like to thank Professor Nannal. So she's, I think, not able to join. She's the one who asked me to give this colloquium. I'm also grateful to Professor Tomar and the Vidyut team for agreeing to host this event at Miranda House and also making all these arrangements. Okay. So this is what I'm going to talk about. The title, as already Nivedita said, is randomness in biological evolution. So all of you have heard of evolution, and the words that come to your mind when you hear about evolution are mutation and selection. But what has that to do with randomness? Randomness here means stochasticity. So it turns out that besides mutation and selection, stochasticity plays a very important role in evolution, in shaping how evolutionary trajectories evolve over time. So that is the main thing. That's the simple main point that I want to make today. So in the next 35 minutes or so. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So let's start from the beginning, which is what is evolution? So again, this is something which you all have read or heard about, but let me remind you. So, you see a lot of variation around you. For example, in your class, you see that your classmates are slightly look different from you, right? So there's a lot of diversity. You go to your garden in the house or somewhere and you will see there are flowers of the same type, even then they're slightly different. So there's a lot of variation. And some of this variation, however, can be passed from one generation to another. And if these variants, they happen to be good in an environment, then they're selected for. That means they could have more number of offspring, the chances of survival could be more, and so on. And then these variants which have been passed on because they were good, then the story will repeat in the sense that they may have new variation appearing, and which again, if it is good, may be passed on and so on. So that's basically the crux of the matter, the crux of evolution. And let me say this in words of Darwin, which says that, I'm quoting here Darwin, that natural selection is scrutinizing the slightest heritable variations, rejecting that which is bad, preserving and adding up all that is good. Okay. So the keywords here are selection, variation, and heritability. Then he goes on to say that we see nothing of these slow changes in progress. We only see that the forms of life are now different from what they formerly were. That means you cannot see evolution in action. But I mean, this was 1859, but there is lots of examples now we know where we can see evolution in action. And one of the simplest examples is something which all of you have read in school. So let me again take you through that. So as you know, as you remember perhaps from school, that there are this story of peppered moth. So there are these two types of moths that are the dark one and the light ones. And so this story is set in England. Okay, so there are these two types of moths, the dark one and the light ones. That means there's a variation in the population. And this is the story before Industrial Revolution, when the trees are covered with lichen. At that time, the light colored moths are nicely camouflaged, whereas dark ones are visible to the predators, namely the birds, and they were eaten up more. So they are selected against. Okay, and therefore this variation which is passed on, it's these variants are not good, so therefore they're selected against, and therefore the numbers of the dark peppered moths in the pre-industrial era were small. Okay, but then during Industrial Revolution, when these trees got covered with soot, the dark moths are better camouflaged, and therefore they are selected for, and their numbers therefore increased. But again, in the 1950s, there was cleanup and so on. So because of that, the trees are again, don't have soot, but they again have this lichen, and therefore the dark colored moths are selected against. Okay, so the point here is that there is this variation in the population, and as environment changed, whichever was good, whichever color was good in that environment was selected for, and therefore its number increased. The second point I want to make from this slide is that these changes in the frequency of, say, the dark colored moth, it increased from nearly zero, not zero, but maybe 1 or 2% towards almost 80-90%. And then it fell back to, again, the current number, which is again 3-4% or so. But all these big changes in the frequency, this happened over a short period, about 50 years, 75 years or something, which is like just one human generation. Okay, so this is an example of evolution in action. So all of this, you have read this story in school. This is really a hypothesis which was put forward in 1896. So that is that this is how the numbers in the moths, how they are changing. This was only hypothesized. But the story doesn't end with hypothesis. One has to check it, one has to test it. And experiments were only conducted much later, like in 1955, Kettlewell started his experiments, and they were more recently they were repeated by Myers. Okay, and experiments are rather simple. All one does is that there's some sort of an enclosure in which a bunch of moths, a certain finite number, which initially you fix that how many moths are you have, you release them in the night, and they will sit wherever they like, typically on trees or other places as also. And then before dawn, after dawn, because after dawn, the birds, which are the predators, they will come, and if they can see the dark one or the light one, they will eat them up, right? Okay. So after dawn, a few hours after dawn, you just go and count how many moths are left. So you started with some initial number, and then after dawn, you check how many are left. And therefore, you just plot the fraction of surviving moths as a function of time. So these are done on an yearly basis. I think he just, Myers conducted them in the natural environment, not in some artificial enclosure. Okay. So first of all, these people, they actually observed the birds eating the moths. So it's a hypothesis that the birds are the ones which are driving this whole numbers. But you have to test it. Is it birds? Is it something else? So this was checked. So this is one perhaps relatively simple thing. But the point about these experiments is also to measure these numbers, to make these things quantitative. So for example, you can ask, okay, these birds are the predators and they are going to eat the dark colored moth. Okay, so therefore you expect, because this is 2000, so now again the trees are covered with lichen, so therefore you expect that the dark colored moth's number will be smaller, right? So the fraction surviving will be smaller. But will it be 0.1% or 0.2%? But you see, this is about 0.7%, 70% of the moths survived. Whereas the light colored moths, is it like 99% of the moths survived? No, about 80% survived. Right? So these numbers are not obvious. You cannot predict those numbers, right? Until you do an experiment, until you do some theory. So the key point that I want to make from this little example, which you have not read in school, is the fact that this story that you read, actually it has been subjected to a lot of experiments. And the idea here is to get numbers, to get these quantitative estimates of how much selection is. So when we say about selection, but how much selection? So there is a way of quantifying. So that is what these experiments are telling you. Okay. But this is the color of the moth. But anything like my hair color, your eye color, all this is determined by some underlying genetics. There is some DNA sequence where it's a gene which is going to determine these colors. Okay. So this, of course, in 1914, we didn't know what DNA is, but there's some idea about what might be determining this color. But the actual gene which determines this color has been found only very recently. So the story that you read in school, okay, which started almost this 100 years, over this period of 100 years, lots of exciting stuff has been done in this little example that you read in school. Okay, starting from this hypothesis to the testing and going to the genetics of it. Okay, so this is one example. And like I said already, that important thing about this example is also that it tells you that evolution is observable. Let me give you one more example. So this is a very classical experiment. So this started in 1988 by Lenski. So what he did is again, so I have written here Barrick because now Lenski is pretty senior when he started this experiment in 88, and he's now pretty senior. So he is handing over his lab to his former student collaborator Barrick. So that's why I wrote this. Okay, so the experiment is on microbes. That is a E. coli bacteria. And again, it's a simple experiment. So what one has is, so, this E. coli bacteria is, when it lives in our guts, it's very commonly found everywhere. Okay, so you take this usual type, which in this, also called wild type. That means this is the usual type which is hanging around. You take these wild type and they use glucose, but you just give them less glucose than they are used to. Okay, so now we have this population which has of E. coli, of this bacteria E. coli, which has which has been put in a different environment. Okay, will it evolve? Well, in this colony there will be some variation, and some of that variation would be good in the sense that it will allow the population to survive. Okay, and so that variation, if it is if it's present and if it is inherited when the bacteria divides and next generation is formed, then it will be passed on, and it could help to this population to survive. Right. So that's again the crux of the evolution that I said in the first slide. Right. So in this case, they find, therefore, they had this 12 flasks in 12 such populations. And they just, saw what's the average fitness of this population. So here, average fitness is simply you grow these colonies of E. coli and see the size of the colony, if it grows or not. Okay, so that's a measure of fitness. So you plot this fitness as a function of time. And this is, this 50,000 generations, now it's about 70, 80,000 generations actually. So what they find is that this fitness relative to the ancestor increases over time. That means this population is able, although it's starving, it has less food than it's used to. These variants which are present, they were able to cope with this challenging environment and produce individuals, and therefore, grow such colonies which can withstand less food, and therefore they survive, and this is their fitness, which is increasing with time. Initially, this fitness increased quite fast, about 40% rise, but then after that it is slowed down. Okay, so that's the curve that you get from experiments, which is shown here in points. Okay, so if a population is surviving, you would expect, yes, its fitness, it must have improved its fitness, but that's a qualitative statement. Once again, let me stress that the point of doing all these experiments, I mean, at least these days, is to make quantitative statements, which means here for these guys, what they did was actually come up with a theory to see if they can understand the shape of this curve. What is the shape of this curve? It's not clearly not linear, but what is it? Is it logarithmic? What is it? I mean, can we say something about it? So they came up with these two competing theories, which are shown in green and red. So they have to add some new things about evolution, which could explain these curves. Okay, so that's and of course you can observe it. It's very, very observable. You can just see evolution in action. It's a very classical experiment, and it is still going on. So every day, still in Lenski lab, this experiment is continuing. So this was about fitness, which I said was about look at the size of the colony, but you can also look at the underlying genetics of it. That means you can ask that there are these various variants which are coming, various mutants that are coming over time. How does their frequency, just like the moth frequency, how does that change with time? And there's a lot of stuff going on in this experiment. There is what I'm showing you is trajectories. That means the frequency as a function of time of various mutants. So one mutant came and it spread through the population. Then another one came, but maybe it died. Then another one came, which again increased, decreased, and so on. There are lots of mutants are there, which are coming over the course of time. Some are managing to spread, others are getting lost. So there is this considerable amount of detailed information that you can nowadays you can obtain. And it poses a lot of questions. So for example, you can ask, can we predict which mutants will spread? So there are lots of them coming. Can we say which one will predict? Can we say which one will spread? What are their properties? Can we understand the shape of the fitness curve? Right? So, or in that moth experiment that I described, I said there's a moth color and then there is a certain underlying gene. So we can see that a certain frequency of for example, the dark red moths, its frequency is changing over time. It was slow, that increased, and then became low. But what's happening at the genetic level? Genetic frequency is also changing, right? The gene frequency, how does that connect with the colors that you're seeing? How does that change with time? How do we understand that relationship, right? So we can ask these questions. Yet another question, which I will say a little bit more today, is what is the impact of changing environment? For example, in the case of moths, there was pollution. There was no pollution earlier, then pollution came, and then again less pollution. But because environment is changing, it should impact the evolutionary trajectories. So what is the impact of that? So I'll say a little bit about that today. Okay, these are all very complicated, very complex questions and very involving questions. So we will not worry right now about it. I will tell you some very simple, basic stuff. And we will start with a very simple question. Okay, so let's start like this. So for example, we have all have gone through this last 2 years of, this pandemic. And if you read the newspapers, you will see every few months, there is some variant or the other they are reporting, that is being reported, right? So now this variant, what does it mean? So there's some population of, let's say, Delta virus, right? It has some genes of, some DNA sequence. Mutations are simply some random changes that happen. And now, when a random change happens, a new variant, and they happen constantly. All the time, these variations, these mutants appear. Okay. But some mutants, when they appear, the UN is telling you that, WHO is telling you that they are variants of concern. But when they became variants of concern, before that, when these variants of concern, they just appeared, they must be in small numbers, right? Because they're new, right? They cannot just shoot up, right? Initially, they are in small number. So it's like, this is what I'm showing you by this moths, where this is the Delta variant, if you like, and a new variant has appeared. Just, recently it has appeared. Maybe it will become a variant of concern. That means it will spread to the population. Maybe it won't. What do we expect? Okay, will it spread? How will its frequency change over time? Can we say? Okay, so there are some simple expectations. So you expect that if this variant, this mutant is beneficial, meaning if it's a good mutant, it has a higher fitness, its frequency should increase with time, and it cannot keep increasing, because the number of humans in this on Earth is finite, right? So therefore, it will spread, and then let's say it spread it through all of us. So therefore, this number should saturate, right? So that's what you expect qualitatively, and therefore the wild type, that means which is initially present, its number should decrease, right? That's a simple intuitive expectation of yours. And this is the expectation which also comes by when you look at some theories. The problem with those theories is, however, they also predict that it will take forever to eliminate this wild type. So if all the Delta variant goes and some new variant, Omicron, has spread, for the Omicron to spread through all of us, it will take forever. Or Delta to disappear from Earth, it will take forever. Now, if you think about it, this does not make sense. There's only a finite number. Okay, we are 7 billion, 8 billion people, but it cannot be infinite time, right? And you're physicists, you can appreciate this point, right? 8 billion people, but it cannot take forever. It might take maybe, I don't know, maybe 2 years, 3 years, maybe a million years, but not forever. Whereas these theories, these are deterministic theories. Deterministic theories, they predict it will take forever, which is simply wrong. So what is wrong here? Right? Some of the things was correct. No, it was consistent with our intuition. So these deterministic theories, by definition, are the ones which neglect stochastic fluctuations. Okay, they assume that there are no fluctuations, there's no stochasticity. And this stochasticity is important when the numbers are small. Okay, so the numbers will be small, but because when the Omicron just came, it is present in small numbers, right? So therefore, at that time, stochasticity is important. Similarly, when the wild type is going to extinction, its number has become small. There, stochasticity is important. And because this stochasticity is ignored, these deterministic theories, they give incorrect result. Okay, so what is this stochasticity? Now, I remember that we did not really do many courses which deal with stochasticity and so on. I mean, actually, you are doing some courses, but I'll come to that in a minute. So let's leave evolution for a minute and go to something which, as a physicist, we are used to. And, in fact, we can all play a game, even if you're not a physicist. Okay, so this is a game, and it's an old problem, which is called a gambler's ruin problem. So it's, I think Pascal posed a question to Fermat in 1656. So it's an old classical question. And they posed the question, and of course, both of them also solved the problem independently. But and this problem is the standard problem, and I will describe it to you in some sort of modern context, in some using modern words. Okay, so the game is this. Suppose you have 50 rupees. I give you 50 rupees, and then you toss a coin. If you get a head, then you gain 1 rupee. If you get a tail, then you lose 1 rupee. And you continue to play this game until you wind up either with 0 rupees or 100 rupees. That's the game. Okay. So start with 50 rupees. If you get heads, your money has increased. If you get a tail, your money is decreased. And you continue to do that. So I played this game in the computer. I tossed this coin 500 times, and I got that, the number of my amount of my money was fluctuating a little bit, maybe for sometimes about 55, 45 rupees and so on. That means I cannot finish this game. It looks like I will never get 0 rupees or 100 rupees, right? And that's what you expect perhaps also, right? But the question here was, what's the chance that the player is ruined? That means the player will wind up getting 0 rupees. So, I mean, what is this question then, right? Doesn't make sense, no? Okay, so I played this game. I continued this game for some more time. And this is what I find. I found that although at 500 tosses or something, my money was fluctuating about 50. Sometimes I had 45 rupees, sometimes I had 50 rupees, sometimes 55 rupees, and so on. But at some point, there were large fluctuations, large changes in the amount of money. Sometimes I was reduced to 20 rupees. Sometimes it became 40 again, 20, 10 rupees. Oops, at some point, I actually ended up getting only 0 rupees. And that's where I stopped the game. Right? So I repeated the game. And this time, which is the blue one, the light blue trajectory, again, initially the numbers were fluctuating about 50. And in this game, it's turned out, again, there's a large fluctuation, and I ended up getting 100 rupees. So I repeated this game many times. Sometimes I ended up getting 0 rupees. Sometimes I got 100 rupees. So therefore, first of all, in fact, the game will stop. You are actually guaranteed to wind up with either 0 or 100 at large enough time. So therefore, this question is, what's the chance that you will get 0 rupees at large times? And if you like, you can answer, it's a simple, I think you can answer this question. If you like, you can enter the answer in chat box. Okay. But the point about this problem is that initially there are small deviations. Okay. There are small fluctuations, but later on there are large fluctuations. Okay. And when these fluctuations are large and these numbers here became small, okay, these numbers they become over here, they become small, and then it's possible that you hit the 0. Okay, so this, yeah, okay, and it's not about that you have to start only with 50 rupees or something. You can start even with 1 rupee. Even then, I guarantee that you will at large times. So you expect, what do you expect? Let me ask that. If you start with 1 rupee, you expect that, yeah, most likely I will lose the game, right? I will pretty quickly wind up with 0 rupees. But there's a chance that even if you start with 1 rupee, you can win 100 rupees. There's a chance for that. Similarly, if you start with 99 rupees, there's a chance that you wind up getting 0 rupees. Okay, so that's not very intuitive perhaps, but if you think about it a little bit more, I think it's not that difficult to sort of to understand this. Okay, so this is the simple problem that I would like you to keep in mind from, and this something which we can analyze using tricks from physics, which I will not describe to you in detail, but this is a simple example as a physicist you can keep in mind. Okay, so what has all this to do with evolution? Okay, so in evolution, again, stochasticity comes because of the fact that an organism produces more offspring than they can actually be sustained in a population. So for example, fruit fly, you have seen that, no? At home, the fruits, if you keep like mango season now, and there's this little flies that will come around and hover around. Those are fruit flies. They typically lay around 50 eggs or so. Okay, imagine if each of the 50 eggs survived, and then each of those 50 surviving offspring, they each of them laid 50 eggs and so on. I mean, so they, exponentially the numbers will increase. But of course, in the whole earth, at some point, there's not enough number of mangoes or fruits for the fruit flies to survive. So there's a finite carrying capacity in a system. So then so this leads to randomness in evolution in the following way. So let me just describe to you a simple model of evolution. So the model is simply this. Suppose we have, let's not think of Drosophila, but let's say bacteria. So I have 6 bacteria, 3 which I'm denoting because being a physicist, I'm just drawing them by a circle and square. So I have 3 squares and 3 circles. I'm doing that because I'm saying that these squares and circles, they're equally fit, they're equally good. There's no difference in their fitness. It's just somehow, but they are different, but they're not, their fitness is not different. They maybe have different color, different shape, but the equal fitness. Okay, so now suppose imagine this, I have an environment in which can sustain only 6 of the bacteria. And then this bacteria divided. Now we got 12 bacteria, but the system cannot sustain 12 bacteria, it can sustain only 6. So other 6 have to die. So what we can do is to toss a coin and kill half of them. So heads survive, tail die, and so on. So because of that, we wind up getting, not necessarily, it can happen, but not necessarily, that you wind up getting perhaps 2 squares and 4 circles. So they were equally good, yet you wind up getting a little more circle than the squares. Opposite can also happen. And also, of course, it can happen that all 3 next generation, they remain 3 and 3. That can also happen, but it's a possibility. Okay, so now if I play this game on the computer, continued playing this game for many, many generations, what do I find? Something very similar to the gambler's ruin problem happens. So I started with this 250 squares. And when I ran this simulation, I find that in some cases, the number of squares at large enough time became 0. All the squares disappeared. Okay. When I repeated this game, then in another simulation, I find that these number of squares, they became 500, double. All the squares, all the population was square, just like in the gambler's ruin problem. That is, initially, it fluctuated about 250, the initial number, and then it could reach either all became squares or all became circles. Okay, so but just to clarify, I'm assuming here that while the simulation is going on, there are no new variants are coming. So we don't put in new squares and new circles. Okay, no new variants should arise, because otherwise you cannot do this. You will not get to this state. Okay, and just like and this result, which is very interesting. It's not just true for the case when squares and circles have equal fitness. Imagine now squares were better than circles. Then what's your intuition, which is what we started a discussion with? Your intuition is that all will become squares at long times. But no, there is a chance that all those squares may be better. There is a chance that all squares may be lost. Okay. Similarly, suppose squares were worse. I mean, so the same story, squares are worse. Even then, you expect that maybe they'll get lost. But there's a chance that squares, the whole population can become squares. Okay. So this is the sort of the key difference which randomness brings in evolution. Deterministically, that is, if you ignore stochastic fluctuations, you expect that a good mutant will definitely win. Stochastically, there is only a chance, there's only a probability less than 1 that a good mutant will win. It can get lost. So that's a very important result, and which actually plays a lot of role in evolutionary theory, and I'll describe that a little bit. Okay. And similarly, a bad mutant need not necessarily get lost. It can also survive. Okay. This is a sort of classical result, which was sort of found actually in the 1920s, 1930s, and later on 1960s again, in a more elaborate theory, and using ideas that perhaps maybe if you in physics, if you continue, you will see perhaps in another maybe 4 or 5 years. So it's sort of a more developed theory of probability. Okay, and this problem that I started with saying that things cannot take forever, that also gets sorted if we take stochastic fluctuations into account. So this idea that just because you're good does not mean that you will survive, or just because you're bad does not mean that you will not survive. Stochastic fluctuations can upend this thing. This has consequences. So let me just explain that a little bit. So because good mutants need not, they can get lost, it turns out that the speed of adaptation can slow down. So here, for example, what is shown here is the wild type frequency, which was decaying because a better mutant, the blue one, came in. And it was increasing because it's better. But it's possible that another better mutant came, but instead of combining their strengths, they start to compete. And because of that competition, it's possible that this blue one get lost. There's a chance. It's possible the blue one also spreads, but there's a chance that the blue one gets lost. Okay. So because of this, the good mutations are getting lost. There's a waste of good mutations. They need not spread. They can get lost. So that's the key point here. And this effect plays a role in understanding why the fitness was not growing as fast as it was growing initially. So in this experiment of Lenski, this effect, that the fact that the beneficial mutations can get lost, that's sort of plays a role in understanding this part of the curve. Okay. Similarly, bad mutations, they can spread. So just like I said earlier, bad mutations need not get lost. Just because you're bad does not mean you will not survive. Bad can also survive. There's a chance for that. So imagine now a population in which bad mutations are spreading. Bad mutations, it's not able to get rid of them. Bad mutations are coming and they don't get rid of it. It's there, it's there, it's there. Okay. But if a population can keep getting it, that means its fitness will reduce. But if its fitness will reduce, that means its size will become small. And if size becomes small, that means there'll be more fluctuations, more stochasticity. And this can actually lead to extinction of the population. So these are some of the effects. So in fact, this idea that, that if you can make the population accumulate bad mutations and can lead to the extinction, this was actually recently proposed to combat coronavirus. That somehow that it's possible by, I think, through some drugs to induce to accumulate bad mutations in the virus, and therefore, because of this reason, it will just lead itself to extinction. So, but I don't know if it has actually been implemented. I mean, I think it is not implemented, not yet at least. But these are very important ideas which one has learned over last 50, 60 years in evolutionary theory. Okay. So So how does one study this evolution theoretically? So I'm a physicist. So I study evolution, but I don't do experiments. So what is a theoretician doing? What is a physicist doing in understanding evolution? So what one does is it's an interdisciplinary approach to understand evolution. One uses the laws of genetics. So the laws that you are aware of are the ones that you read in school, then the Mendel's laws. So Mendel's laws and some other stuff. There are more of genetics that we have to use. Plus the ideas from probability. That is what we use to understand evolution. So let me elaborate this thing about probability, because because you are in your first year, second year student, and you might wonder that I have not really read probability, but actually you will be doing, or you have done courses in quantum mechanics, right? Where you will encounter things happening probabilistically. Okay, you will be doing courses in statistical mechanics. In fact, you will be doing course in equilibrium statistical mechanics. Okay, so which again deals with probability of some configurations. What I'm describing to you here is non-equilibrium stat mech. Okay, so you will study in your school, in your college, in your courses, equilibrium stat mech, but actually life and other things in general are not an equilibrium. But you should pay attention therefore to your course in equilibrium stat mech, so that you can at some point start thinking of the more realistic things, which is a non-equilibrium stat mech. Okay, so these ideas are combined. This interdisciplinary approach is taken to combine ideas from genetics, that is biology, and from physics and maths, which is like the probability or statistical physics, to understand evolution. Okay, and there's some couple of, actually there are lots of questions, but a couple of questions that I want to just spend a little time on is to ask the question that if I have some mutant coming, what's the chance that it will survive? We have agreed that a mutant need not necessarily survive. There's a probability for that. And how much time does it take to spread? So these are classical questions that people ask in this subject. May I ask, how much time do I have?
I think you can carry on, no problem. I think 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll wind up in 10 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So fine. So I will just say very basic stuff about this, and yeah. Okay. So I just I wanted to describe a little bit about our recent work in this. So we wanted to understand evolution when the environment is changing continually. So for example, there's global warming, right? So therefore the temperature of the earth has been increasing linearly, as you know, for last 50, 60 years at least, right? So which is impacting lots of stuff, lots of life at various levels, right? So the evolutionary trajectories of various organisms at various levels will be affected by this. So remember what I said, that these variations, if they are good in an environment, then only they will spread, right? But the environment itself is changing. So therefore, today you're good, tomorrow it's not good. So will it spread? Will it not spread? How does it decide? And so on, right? And these changes happen at various levels. It could be daily changes in temperature, seasonal changes, and like I said, larger scales over the decade scale, like global warming. So we wanted to understand in some simple model to answer these questions about what's the chance that a mutant would spread if the environment is changing. So we took a simple model, which is of this following type. So we are thinking of, for example, a plant in which a mutant comes, and in the summer, that mutant is perhaps good, and it starts to spread through the population. So therefore, its frequency increases because it's good, which is what we expect. Okay, but now environment has changed. It's winter, and there this mutant is not good. So its frequency decreased, and oops, very close to extinction. But because of fluctuations, it perhaps got lucky and still increased. And thankfully, yeah, season again changed. It's summertime, and again it increased, and so on. And in this trajectory, it happened to survive. Okay, but of course, it's possible it may not have survived. So it's like saying in the gambler's ruin problem that I say that first 10 tosses, if you get ahead, then you win 1 rupee. In the next 10 tosses, if you get ahead, you lose 1 rupee, right? So sometimes head is good, sometimes head is bad. Okay, and then what's the chance that you will win the game? Okay, so it's a little more difficult problem, but perhaps you can think about it. So anyhow, so we wanted to understand, therefore, what's the chance that this mutant would survive in this changing environment. And this is the work of one of my former student, Archana Devi. So we find that this probability of change of probability of a mutant to spread can be affected by a large amount in a changing environment. So if environment was constant, the probability of spreading is something by this dotted line. But the changing environment, it can reduce by almost 2 orders of magnitude. It can also be enhanced by a factor of 2, and again 2 orders of magnitude or so. Okay, so the point is that the chance of spreading may decrease or increase in changing environment compared to when the environment is static. So it's a sort of simple model which we wanted to understand what's the effect of the changing environment. So other question was about how much time does it take for this to happen, and then for that we have to write down certain differential equations, which of course I will not show you, but there is a result which says that in constant environments, a mutant with 10% advantage goodness takes same time to spread as the one with 10% disadvantage. So this is a very counterintuitive result, because you expect perhaps that advantageous one will spread fast and disadvantageous ones, if it spreads, may take maybe long time. I'm not sure, but the maths shows that actually they take the same time. Okay. We find that if you allow environment to change, this symmetry does not hold anymore. And this has some consequences, which of course I will not, however, discuss today. Okay, so the reason I said that we model these things and is because of this, because we want to get quantitative answers. We want to get some formulas. We want to get some numbers. So if I asked you that what's the effect of a changing environment, you would say, yeah, it will affect things. But how does it affect things? How does a formula or how does the number change if I assume the environment was a constant, right? So this whole enterprise is, at least last few decades, when physicists have got involved into, is because we want to get quantitative answers. We want to get formulas. We want to get numbers. Okay, so that's why I'm interested in understanding this. And as I said, it's an interesting subject because it combines the genetics, which is the biology part, and probability, which are from physics or maths. And so I like this sort of nice combining of these two disciplines. We probably think that, they are very different, but it's nice to be able to combine the ideas. Okay, so I think I'm almost done. So these are the simple take-home lessons for you. First of all, evolution is observable, okay? And there are large number of very well-studied, very studied examples of evolution in action. A lot of details are available. We know a lot about evolution now, which we can observe in field experiments, in experiments in lab. So this is very observable. The second point, which I want you to take home today, is that evolution is a largely stochastic process. So when you think of evolution, you think of selection, you think of mutation. When you read in newspapers, again, you read about selection and mutation. However, randomness is an integral part of evolutionary process. That somehow is not emphasized or said in, in newspaper reports or general discussion, but it's really, 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 really important. I mean, I cannot emphasize it enough. Okay, it changes the answers. And because randomness is important, and not just in evolution, as I said already, you will see that stochasticity coming in, probability coming in your courses in statistical physics. You will see it in your quantum courses. But I probably not everybody in the audience is a physicist, but in chemistry also this happens. It happens that stochasticity plays an important role in finance and in the other branches of biology as well. So I would invite you to read up a little bit more or discuss the importance of probability, because it's sort of, not very intuitive subject. But I do invite you to have a look at some books and discuss and learn more about it. Okay, with that, I think I can stop. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So let us begin with our query session now. Ma'am, shall I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the first query is asked by Rashi. Why do some species, instead of evolving, get extinct eventually?
So actually, all species will go eventually extinct. So typically it's about, so there's always some degeneration in a species that happens. So actually humans are been around about 4 million years, and it's about time that we go extinct. So it's not just some species, all species eventually go extinct. This is inevitable.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, the next question is asked by Kripa. Are evolution and survival of the fittest the same thing?
So survival of the fittest means that if you're fittest, that means you're the best, which means all of us should have equal fitness, right? But that's not true. And still we survive, right? So it's it's not really correct to say it's the fittest. Okay. So the picture that we have of evolution is that not everything. So if you think of a fitness peak, think of Mount Everest, if you like. It's not like all the individuals, all the population sitting right at the peak. One actually thinks of as though it's a sort of cloud centered about the peak. So it's not about the fittest. It's about a cloud around the peak. And evolution says that, yes, it will try to bring you towards that peak. But like I already said, you can have population also living in the valleys in small amount. Like, for example, I said about dark pepper north, it's there. Variation is important. Not everything has to be good. Variation is extremely important. Not all variants are fit. So there will be some variants which is in the peak, some variants slightly below peak, and also in the valley. And they can be very important, because when suppose environment changes, that means your Mount Everest peak is over here, but tomorrow the peak has shifted over here. The ones which are in valley, they will become important. So we should not think of in terms of fitness, which is not really correct.
Ma'am, the next is by Anaga.
Yeah.
Why is randomness important in evolution?
Why?
Why is randomness important in evolution?
Yeah, so that was the whole talk. So like I said already, because it's not because, like, for example, I told you that extinction can happen because bad mutations were accumulating, right? And bad mutations can accumulate because of randomness. So like somebody asked, why extinction? Because bad mutations are accumulating, right? So that is why randomness is very, 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 very important.
Okay. Ma'am, the next one by Priyamvida. If humans evolved from apes, then why are apes still there?
Humans are evolving, but it's just that we can coexist with it. So let's take the example of coronavirus, for example. So probably it's a similar question that you're asking about AIDS. So we are saying the coronavirus will not go away, right? We will be living with it. So
Yes.
if, however, coronavirus is such a variant comes which kills us, right? If it is so lethal, it is so bad, it is so strong that it kills it, what will happen to the virus? The virus itself will get killed, no? Right? So because, it has killed its host. So how will it multiply? So it has killed it itself. But if it is bad, but not too bad, so therefore we just get a flu and we can live with it, we can coexist. So humans are evolving still. It's not human evolution. It's not as if human evolution has stopped. Environment is changing. There are new challenges. So we will evolve. We are evolving. But if it is not too bad, we can coexist.
Okay, the next one is a long one by Avni. In science fiction movie Arrival, the aliens are able to rearrange their morphs structures to communicate with the humans. Does there exist species in our ecosystem which are able to morph their shape or some biomolecule trait of theirs for survival?
Yeah, they do it all the time. In fact, in Lenski experiment, there was a wonderful thing which happened. So there is, they live in glucose, they metabolize glucose, the E. coli. And citrate, that is something called citrate that they cannot usually. But these guys morphed. So I'm not talking about physical structure, but the genetical structure. It was such that they could now utilize a different nutrient. But these are large changes. If you're thinking of morphs, these are large changes. These large changes happen, but not typically. So it is possible, this morphing and so on, but it doesn't happen very often.
Okay. The next one is by Sapna. Are humans influencing the process of evolution?
Yeah. So we are influencing. So, for example, so the other day I was reading about, let's say the animals, the way they behave in the wild versus in the cities, right? So they see lights, lights are on most of the time in the cities, right? So a sparrow which will behave, it's eating and other things, it will be different, also genetically. Okay, so here it's not just about looking and so on, it's about genetics. So that will be different from the wild. So humans are influencing it, and maybe we are hastening our extinction through our activities.
Ma'am, the next one again by Kripa. Does evolution in humans can also lead to difference in the future? I guess that you have already answered.
Yeah, it can. Yeah.
Does evolution stop once a species becomes a whole species?
When a species becomes?
When a species becomes a species.
I'm not understanding the question, I think.
That's what she wrote.
I didn't understand the question.
Okay. So, ma'am, these are all the questions asked.
Yeah.
So with this, the interactive sessions ends here. Thank you, ma'am, for giving us such an informative talk and for solving the queries. I hope that everyone's doubt is clear now.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of Vidyut, the Physics Society of Miranda House, I, Megha Atri, the Joint Secretary of Vidyut, would like to express my gratitude to all the esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and kind attention. I extend my gratitude to Indian Physics Association, Professor Vandana, for giving this opportunity to Miranda House to host this session, and our honorable speaker, Professor Kavita Jain, to take out time from a busy schedule and grace this event. A special thanks to the teachers of the Physics Department of Miranda House for providing immense support to make this webinar successful. I must thank Mr. Shinde for providing the technical support, the organizing team, the volunteers for working hard to make this webinar a great success. Last but not the least, thanks to all the participants for their presence and active participation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jain. And this is the online seminar, and we wish if you could visit Miranda House in person. So whenever you come to Delhi next time, you please spare half a day to visit us also.
Sure, I will do that. I'll be happy to do that. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Samit. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Mandal.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks.